Okay, we need to talk, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm 28 years old. I've built multiple million-dollar businesses, and I still have to deal with people asking me, either directly or indirectly, whether black people are somehow less intelligent when it comes to making money. So today, we're addressing this head-on. Are black people dumber than white people when it comes to making money? The answer is absolutely not. And I'm about to break down exactly why this question is racist, what's really going on, and what the actual data says. Let's start here. The very premise of this question is rooted in racism. It assumes that if there's a wealth gap, it must be because of intelligence differences. That's not science. That's prejudice. And we need to call it what it is before we can dismantle it. Here's what people do. They look at the wealth gap between black and white Americans, and they make a logical fallacy. They say, well, if black people have less wealth, it must be because they're less capable of building wealth, less smart, less disciplined, less something. That's like looking at a marathon where one group started at the starting line and another group started 5 miles behind, and when the race is over, saying the group that's behind must be slower runners. No, they had less distance to cover. They started with a disadvantage. That's not about ability. That's about the structure of the race. So let me be crystal clear. Intelligence and wealth are not the same thing. There are brilliant people who are broke. There are average people who are rich. Wealth is about access, opportunity, systems, and yes, some luck. It's not an IQ test. Let's talk about what actual science says. Because racists love to misuse science to justify their prejudice. They'll point to IQ tests or other metrics and claim they prove racial differences in intelligence. But here's what they conveniently leave out. 1. IQ tests are culturally biased. They were designed by white people, for white people, based on white cultural norms and educational systems. When you create a test that assumes certain cultural knowledge and then give it to people who don't share that culture, of course the results are going to be skewed. That's not measuring intelligence. That's measuring cultural alignment with the test makers. 2. Environment matters more than genetics. Study after study has shown that when you control for socioeconomic factors, educational access, nutrition, stress, and environmental conditions, racial gaps in test scores disappear or dramatically shrink. That tells you the gap isn't about inherent intelligence, it's about conditions. 3. There is more genetic diversity within racial groups than between them. Geneticists have proven this. The concept of race as a biological category doesn't even hold up scientifically. Race is a social construct. It's not a genetic reality. So the idea that one race is genetically smarter than another, that's pseudoscience. That's racism dressed up in a lab coat. The American Psychological Association, the American Anthropological Association, and virtually every credible scientific organization have stated clearly. There is no evidence of genetic differences in intelligence between races. None. So when someone suggests that black people are inherently less intelligent, they're not speaking from science. They're speaking from bias. The real reasons for the wealth gap. So if it's not intelligence, what explains the wealth gap? Let me break down the actual, documented, historical, and systemic reasons why black Americans have less wealth than white Americans. Slavery. Let's start at the beginning. For 250 years, black people in America were enslaved. That means zero wealth accumulation, zero property ownership, zero ability to build businesses or pass down assets. White families were accumulating wealth for generations, while black families were literally property. And when slavery ended, there were no reparations. There was no 40 acres and a mule. There was freedom without resources. Meanwhile, white families had centuries of accumulated wealth. Jim Crow and segregation. After slavery ended, Jim Crow laws kept black people from accumulating wealth for another 100 years. We couldn't own property in certain areas. We couldn't get the same jobs. We couldn't access the same education. We were legally barred from building wealth in the same ways white people could. The GI Bill, which helped millions of white families build wealth after World War II through education and home ownership, black veterans were largely excluded. That's documented history. That's not opinion. That's policy that explicitly created a wealth gap. Redlining. Banks literally drew red lines on maps around black neighborhoods and refused to give mortgages to people who lived there. This wasn't just individuals being racist. This was official government policy through the Federal Housing Administration. Black families couldn't buy homes in areas where property values would appreciate. White families could. That created a massive wealth gap through housing alone. And even when redlining officially ended, the effects persist. Black families still live in neighborhoods with lower property values, still attend schools with less funding, still face discrimination in lending, employment discrimination. Studies show that resumes with black-sounding names get fewer callbacks than identical resumes with white-sounding names. Black employees get paid less for the same work. Black professionals get promoted less often. This isn't about capability. This is about bias. I've experienced this myself. Early in my career, I watched white colleagues with less experience and fewer results get promoted over me. When I asked why, I got vague answers about fit and leadership presence. Code for, you're black and we're not comfortable with that. Access to capital. Black entrepreneurs get less than 2% of venture capital funding. When we apply for business loans, we get rejected at higher rates even with the same credit scores and business plans. When we do get approved, we get higher interest rates and worse terms. This isn't about business acumen. This is about who has access to money. I started my first business and got rejected by 7 banks before I gave up on traditional financing. 7 banks looked at my business plan, my projections, my track record, and said no. Meanwhile, white founders with less proven concepts were getting funded. That's not about intelligence. That's about access. Wealth is generational. This is the big one people don't understand. Wealth compounds over generations. If your grandparents could buy a house in 1950 for $20,000, and that house is now worth $800,000, that's wealth you inherit. If your parents could pay for your college, so you graduated debt-free, that's a head start on building wealth. If you have family who can loan you money to start a business or buy a house, that's access to capital. Most black families don't have that. We're starting from zero or negative because our grandparents and great-grandparents were legally prevented from accumulating wealth. So we're not just behind by a generation. We're behind by multiple generations of compound growth that we never got to experience. None of this is about intelligence. All of this is about systems, policies, and barriers that were explicitly designed to prevent black wealth accumulation. That's documented history. That's fact. What about personal responsibility? Now, some people will say, okay, but what about personal responsibility? What about the choices people make? And yes, individual choices matter. But here's what you need to understand. Choices are constrained by circumstances. If you grow up in a neighborhood with underfunded schools, your educational outcomes are worse through no fault of your own. If you don't have access to healthy food, your health outcomes are worse. If you can't afford quality childcare, you can't work the same hours as someone who can. If you don't have a family safety net, you can't take the same risks. Personal responsibility matters, but it exists within a context. And when the context is stacked against you, it takes more effort to achieve the same results. That's not about being less smart. That's about running uphill while others run on flat ground. I work incredibly hard. I'm disciplined. I make good financial decisions. But I also know that if I had started with family wealth, if I had graduated debt-free, if I had access to capital from the beginning, I would have built wealth faster. Not because I would have been smarter or worked harder, but because I would have had more resources. The counter-evidence. Let's look at what happens when you give black people the same opportunities as white people. What happens? We thrive. When black students attend the same quality schools as white students, achievement gaps shrink or disappear. When black entrepreneurs get the same access to capital as white entrepreneurs, their businesses succeed at similar rates. When black professionals work in environments without discrimination, they advance at similar rates. Look at black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. Many come to America with nothing, and within a generation, they're outperforming native-born Americans of all races in educational attainment and income. How? Because many come with education, with professional skills, with networks. They have resources even if they don't have money. Look at historically black colleges and universities. HBCUs have produced a disproportionate number of black professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Why? Because they provide an environment where black students are supported, believed in, and given opportunities. Not because the students are inherently smarter at HBCUs, because the environment allows them to thrive. Look at me. I'm a 28-year-old black woman who built multiple million-dollar businesses. Am I uniquely intelligent? No. I'm smart, but I'm not a genius. What I had was opportunity, access to information, and relentless determination to overcome barriers. If intelligence were the determining factor, there would be millions more black millionaires. The limiting factor isn't intelligence, it's access. The danger of this narrative. Why does this question even persist? Why do people still suggest that black people might be less intelligent when it comes to money? Because it's convenient. Because if the wealth gap is about intelligence, then society doesn't have to fix anything. If black people are just inherently less capable, then there's no need for reparations, no need for policy changes, no need to address systemic racism. But if the wealth gap is about systems and barriers and historical injustice, then society has an obligation to fix it. And that's uncomfortable for people who benefit from the current system. So they deflect. They blame the victims. They suggest maybe black people just aren't as good with money. This narrative is dangerous because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When black children grow up hearing that they're not as smart, not as capable, not as good with money, some of them internalize that. Some of them stop trying. Some of them accept limitations that were placed on them by a racist society. And it's dangerous because it justifies continued discrimination. If people believe black people are less capable, they're less likely to hire us, invest in us, partner with us, support us. The myth perpetuates the reality it claims to describe. Let's talk about what financial intelligence actually is. Because it's not some innate ability you're born with. It's learned, it's taught, it's practiced. Financial intelligence is understanding how money works, how to earn it, save it, invest it, protect it, multiply it. And guess what? Nobody is born knowing this. You learn it from your family, from your education, from your environment, from your experiences. If you grow up in a household where money is discussed, where investing is normal, where entrepreneurship is encouraged, you learn financial intelligence. If you don't, you have to teach yourself as an adult. That's not about intelligence. That's about education and access. I didn't learn about investing from my family. I taught myself. I read books. I took courses. I made mistakes and learned from them. Not because I'm exceptionally smart, but because I was determined to learn what I wasn't taught growing up. And here's what I've learned. Once black people get access to financial education, we do just as well as anyone else. We understand compound interest. We know how to diversify portfolios. We build successful businesses. We create generational wealth. Because it was never about capability, it was always about access. Let me tell you about black excellence in financial spaces, because it destroys this entire narrative. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Before it was destroyed by a white mob in 1921, it was one of the most prosperous black communities in America. Black-owned businesses, black banks, black wealth. It proved that when black people have opportunity and protection, we build thriving economies. So they burned it down. Robert F. Smith, black billionaire, Vista Equity Partners, tech investing. He's one of the most successful investors in America, period. Not one of the most successful black investors, one of the most successful investors. Oprah Winfrey, built a media empire, billionaire, started with nothing, became one of the most influential business people in the world. Jay-Z, from housing projects to billionaire, music, fashion, spirits, investments, built a business empire. Rihanna, billionaire through Fenty Beauty, disrupted the beauty industry by serving customers others ignored. And it's not just celebrities, it's black entrepreneurs building seven-figure businesses in every industry, black investors building portfolios, black professionals earning top salaries, black families building generational wealth. We do it despite the barriers. We do it despite starting behind. We do it despite discrimination and bias and lack of access. Imagine what we could do with equal opportunity. Imagine what we could do if the playing field was actually level. If you're black and you're watching this, here's what I need you to understand. You are not less intelligent. You are not less capable. You are not inherently bad with money. You are navigating a system that was designed to keep you from building wealth. And the fact that you're here, learning, trying to do better, that proves you have what it takes. Don't internalize the lies. Don't let racist narratives make you doubt yourself. You can build wealth. You can achieve financial freedom. You can create generational prosperity. It will be harder for you than for others because of systemic barriers, but it's absolutely possible. Educate yourself. Read books about money. Take courses. Follow Black financial educators and entrepreneurs. Learn from people who look like you and have achieved what you want to achieve. Surround yourself with people who believe in your potential. Be strategic. Understand that the rules aren't fair, so you have to play smarter. Network aggressively. Negotiate fearlessly. Build multiple income streams. Invest consistently. Create systems that work for you. And when you succeed, lift as you climb. Hire other Black people. Invest in Black businesses. Mentor the next generation. Your success creates opportunities for others. Your wealth helps shift the narrative. If you're not Black and you're watching this, I need you to check your assumptions. When you see the wealth gap, don't default to explanations about capability or culture or intelligence. Look at the systems. Look at the history. Look at the barriers. Use your privilege to create opportunities for Black people. If you're in a position to hire qualified Black candidates. If you're an investor, invest in Black businesses. If you're a mentor Black professionals. If you're an ally, be an active one. And when you hear someone suggest that Black people might be less intelligent about money, shut it down. Don't let racist narratives go unchallenged. Educate people. Share facts. Be part of changing the conversation. Are Black people dumber than white people when it comes to making money? Absolutely not. There is zero scientific evidence for this. Zero. The wealth gap exists because of systemic racism, historical injustice, and ongoing discrimination. It exists because of barriers to opportunity, not barriers to intelligence. Black people are just as intelligent, just as capable, just as financially savvy as anyone else. When we have access to the same resources, education, and opportunities, we succeed at the same rates. The difference isn't what's in our heads. The difference is what we have access to. And here's what gives me hope. Despite everything, we're building wealth anyway. We're starting businesses. We're investing. We're creating generational prosperity. We're proving every single day that the narrative is false. We're rewriting the story. So no, Black people are not dumber when it comes to money. We're brilliant. We're resilient. We're creative. We're strategic. And we're building wealth despite a system designed to prevent us from doing so. That doesn't make us dumb. That makes us unstoppable. If this video helped you, if it gave you facts to counter racist narratives, if it reminded you of your own capability, drop a comment and let me know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more real talk about wealth, race, and building financial freedom. And remember, you are capable, you are intelligent, you are worthy of wealth. Don't let anyone tell you different. Now go out there and prove them wrong by winning. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay focused, and let's keep building.